was just thinking tonight about the time Nate is my late husband, and I brought Airto Moreira to our little town of Florence for a concert. It all started when Nate came out of his studio one afternoon and he said, I got this text. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I had found Airto's contact information online and there was this phone number. So I just sent him a text. And I got a response from Deanna, his daughter. And she said, I want to talk to you about something. Airto Moreira has been my idol. And my husband was a fantastic drummer. I mean, if he hadn't had to take care of his kids because his wife left him, he would have probably at least been a session drummer. He was that good. I mean, he could play anything. And anyway, so Airto, he'd seen him a bunch of times because Nate grew up in the Bay Area. So that's where Carlos Santana started. And so they went to all these concerts when he was younger. So he'd been following Airto forever. And he said, I'd really like to bring him up here for a concert. And he said, this has been a bucket list of mine. I said, let's do it. I was like, okay. So he got back to her and they put together a band specifically for this one concert. And it was Andre de Santana, who has played with Sergio Mendes. I might currently be, I don't know, and Herb Alpert, and various other. He was a brilliant bass player. The pianist was Marcos Silva, who was Airto's and Flora Purim. Flora is his wife, Airto and Flora. Marcos was their music editor for 20 years or more. And so he played keyboards. And then there was Mike Shapiro on drums, who had babysat for Airto or he took his daughter to school or something in exchange for drum lessons when he was a kid. So Airto had taught this guy to play drums, who was amazing. My husband was good. This guy was just phenomenal. And I think he played with Herb Alpert also. One of those two. I can't remember. So anyway, and then there was Krishna Booker, who is Walter Booker's son, who was playing, the other percussion. And then Deanna, his daughter, was on vocals. And then Airto with all his amazing percussion. So we flew all of them up here from LA to Portland and rented a big 12-seater van so that we could haul them and their equipment back to Florence. And then so I drove, Nate and I drove up in my little Honda minivan, really stupid old minivan, really old. And I think it was like an 85 or something. Anyway, I don't know, it was old. So we drove that up there. We got up there and met them, and it was all exciting. And we get back to the parking garage, and we're all loading, they're loading stuff into the van. And I had some stuff I was bringing something over to my van, and I look up and Airto comes over and he goes, "You driving back alone?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I ride with you." And I went, "Oh, no, that's okay. And we don't have to, shit, Nate is going to kill me if he rides home with me. It's his idol." And so I said, "Well, okay." So we went back around to the other van, and I leaned in, and Nate was getting in, looking at the driver's seat, and I said, "Airto wants to ride with me." He goes, "What?" He goes, I said, "It was his idea. I swear it was his idea." And he says, "Oh, great, my idol, and he's riding home with you." So Airto and I got into my little 85 or whatever it was minivan, Honda minivan, and drove 3 hours to Florence, Oregon. So I had this man who he played with Miles Davis, Paul Simon, Shaka Khan. He'd been to Isle of Wight, probably Woodstock. I'm not sure if he was at Woodstock. But this man is like this world-class jazz percussionist, Brazilian jazz percussionist, who is, anybody in that world would be drooling over. And here I am in my little Honda minivan. But it was so wonderful because he was like the most wonderful human being, just this normal guy. And I was just thinking, oh God, I wish I could record this, because he was sharing stories about his musical career and stuff that Nate would have died to hear. So I'm thinking, oh God, I got to remember this. I got to remember this. I didn't remember hardly any of it. But one thing he did, I think he talked about this. I know I saw him talk about this on an interview, I think, one time. But he was talking about how when he was a little boy, he's in Brazil, he would just be playing with everything, making noise, with everything. And his mom was really concerned that something was wrong with her little boy, because he was driving her kind of crazy, I think. So she went and talked to her mom, his grandma, and said, I think something's wrong with Airto. And so, she observed him for a little while, and then she turned on some music, and Airto really went crazy, doing his thing. And she goes, oh no, he's a musician. It was so funny. It was so cute, because it was right, because I lived with a musician, and I'm saying that's not always a picnic. Just saying. But anyway, it was such a wonderful time. So then we had this concert, and people were in tears. There were people who had come from like 150 miles away just for this concert, just to see him, because, he hadn't been doing anything for a while. And so after the concert, the band came out front, to the lobby, and he's up there and he's just gaga, like, I can't believe these people want my autograph. They want to talk to me. And it's like, do you have any idea? He had no idea that he was still relevant, I think, because I don't think he'd been playing out other than, in the area down there in LA. I don't think he'd been doing much. And so I think it was just like a really meaningful thing for him to experience this love from everybody. I don't think he didn't expect it, I don't think. So that was really sweet. We had brought them down on a Friday. We went and had dinner with them. Then they went to their motel the next day. Then we got up and helped them set up. And my phone, I'd been videoing, stuff during the day while we were setting up. We get to the concert, and I had never had a chance to charge it. It was on like 15%, so I only got like a snippet from the concert, but it was still wonderful. So anyway, then after they got all set up and rehearsed and stuff, then we went to the concert and then had dinner afterwards. They went to their hotel, and then we got up in the morning and had breakfast. And then I got to drive him back to Portland. And I think the reason he really chose to be in my van was because the minivan was pretty low to the ground. It was one of those where you could just get in, almost like a regular car. It didn't seem so high up. But the other van had a couple of steps, and he was getting older. This was in 2017, and I think he's just turned 80, or 85. I think he just turned 85. So, he was getting up there. And he had been having issues with his hip, is what I remember. So it would have been hard for him to step up into that van. So he rode with me, which was just such a special thing. And I'm sad for Nate, sort of. I'm really glad that we got to do this concert, because I have one of my favorite pictures of Nate. It's really one of the only ones I have that really looks good. That didn't sound right, but I don't have that many of him. But there's a picture of him and Airto in the hallway of the backstage at the concert, and they look like they could be brothers. It's such a beautiful picture, and he was really beaming. So I'm glad we did it, because he died a year and a half later. We got married like a month and a half after that concert, and then he died a year and a half later. So I'm glad we did it. So when something like that comes up for you, you know, if you have an opportunity to do something crazy like that, I mean, this was a crazy thing. We don't have money. He still had a lot of credit card debt when he was gone, but you know what? It was so worth it. Anyway, if you have a chance to do something spectacular or something wild and crazy like that, do it. Take your chance. You won't regret it, really. You won't. Anyway, I just really wanted to share that story. All right. I had it on here before as a thing that I read, that I had written for this book that I'm writing, but I thought I really want to just tell the story because I think it's better. Okay. I hope you're having a wonderful day, whatever it is, and I'll talk to you later.